If you have a horror story that you want me to read on this channel someday, go to reddit.com/r/tripreportstftt.
Welcome to the world of Tales from the Trip.
Some background. Salvia was the first hallucinogen I tried. At first, I smoked it out of a shitty acrylic bong in small doses. The most interesting experiences included uncontrollable laughter and the time I saw endless static, the same static as an early childhood memory when the TV my grandfather always watched broke. Another time, I saw the shape of a clown on my wall, and as I fell to my bed, for a few seconds, I was in a circus with acrobats and elephants. In every trip, I felt the sensation of being pulled apart, like a zipper unzipped down the middle, my brain melting in all directions. This year, I wanted to try it again with better tools, a glass water bong and a torch lighter. A few nights ago, I was preparing for an LSD trip in the morning, but my intuition told me to smoke salvia instead, and so I prepared. I packed around 1/3 of the bowl with a blend of 15 times salvia extract and marijuana, what I believed would have been a mild dose, turned off the lights, put ice in my bong, and sat on my mattress by the window. An anxious, hesitant energy overtook me, like waiting for the big drop on a roller coaster. After a few minutes of meditation and building up my courage, I torched the bowl and inhaled. I put the bong as far away from me as possible, not wanting to knock it over while tripping, and watched the little remaining ember in the bowl burn out. I remembered to hold in the smoke for 20 seconds, and so began the counting as the zipper feeling set in. When I got to 13, I felt my consciousness reduced to a singular point, the barest building block of awareness. It traveled back and forth in a zigzag, duplicating itself every time it bounced back. And as it did so, it became aware of the new duplicate, which only duplicated it further, like a cell splitting into two. These duplications of consciousness layered on top of one another until they created deformed 2D clones of me. This process repeated exponentially, and soon I confronted what felt like millions of them. Everything was now made up of these clones, morphing and twisting like a bunch of slinkies. In my head, I still counted. I reached 14, but as I thought of the word 4, all the clones, who look more like gingerbread man versions of me, echoed my voice, an infinite sequence of fours, still duplicating. A godless factory of clones. Our normal dimension had peeled away to reveal this hellish lower dimension, this primal factory of pure bodily consciousness. It felt profoundly, sickeningly physical. Less like voyaging beyond my body, and more like slapped in the face with the soullessness of physical existence. Even my tongue, heavy in my mouth, was made of clones. I ached for normality. The regular thoughts I could have been thinking as I drifted to sleep, never having smoked salvia. I'm never doing drugs again, I thought. I put my hands to my face in horror, but my hands were made of clones. I was the factory. Anytime I felt like it was over, I would move, and the slinkies of clones would move with me. They spun over each other like the ending of the card game Solitaire. Out loud I said, "No! No! No!" But the clones echoed my voice too, menacingly, mockingly. No! 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 How could they find so much amusement in my suffering? I then reminded myself, you're already on this ride, and you can't get off. Don't fight it. Don't resist it. This is what you asked for. It'll be over soon. I saw my surroundings again. No more clones. but when I looked at the wall, I saw a trail of my own hands from the window to the floor. I had a blanket with me, and I gasped when it turned into a clone of me. Not a 2D gingerbread version, but a literal clone. The boss clone. She laid across my mattress, motionless, and when I touched her, I felt like I was touching my own skin. The vision faded, and I laid back on the mattress. I had escaped the clone factory, and when I closed my eyes, Salvia transported me into my own head. It was like the movie Inside Out on steroids. My neurons worked overtime, frantic, telling each other to go, 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 as if they had business quotas to meet and needed to get everyone up to speed. I realized my body was a factory, but instead of clones, cartoonified cells worked together like a corporation. I traveled down my esophagus. But then, noise from outside, what sounded like someone breaking into the dumpster nearby, and then a car alarm went off, and the harsh sound sent all the cells in my brain scrambling like an earthquake. And then, I felt my essence melt into the road nearby. I had this visual of literally being a road cutting through a tunnel in the mountains, peaceful as the cars passed over me on a starry night. Until I remembered that I was journeying through my body, I took a moment to appreciate my cells working to death to keep me alive. At this point, the trip felt more like a lucid dream, nothing like the awful factory with the clones. And I thought, if that was one of the lower dimensions, what about the higher dimensions? While moving through the spongy matter of my brain, I met an entity who looked like a cartoon ant with white hair. She guided me upward in a glittery fog. I saw something like a door. I sensed my higher self having tea and casual conversation with a guest inside. I couldn't hear what they were saying. I knocked on the door, but I was ignored. Like my higher self couldn't even be bothered with my silliness. Clearly, she didn't want me to interrupt her tea. I imagine the whole experience lasted around 15 minutes total. To summarize, I discovered an awful hell dimension of a factory of infinite clones of myself. I got out, voyaged through my own brain, and saw all the cells working overtime, like they were part of a corporation. Also turned into a road, and tried to meet my higher self, but was promptly ignored. Here's an illustration I made of the wave-like feature that manifested in front of me after smoking 400 milligrams of an incredibly potent 10 times extract. This started when I ordered some plain leaf salvia to create an extract to smoke. I performed a basic acetone extraction to create a 10 times enhanced leaf extract, a potency I have always been familiar with. I loaded about 400 milligrams into a hookah I made from a Pyrex filter flask. I cleared the bowl in one pull, held it, and exhaled a large cloud of smoke and waited the brief couple seconds for the effects. I kept going back to the same place, but this time it was different, more aggressive, an experience so mind-bending it had me rattled for years. It completely reshaped my understanding as to what reality could be and what other realities might exist, and how they may have their fingers in ours. Now, this was the third, final, and most profound salvia trip with this particular batch of 10 times extract. It made any other extracts I made negligible in potency. The effects immensely took hold, and I felt a brief rushing sensation. Then my consciousness teleported through a tunnel of information, zipping past me, very reminiscent of the Star Trek warp drive. The speed quickly slowed, and I remember briefly seeing some sort of glyph. I was too disoriented to remember its detail, almost like a quick flash of geometric insignia marking the doorway to this realm that triggered full recollection of the power and nuances of this place, like how a smell will take you back to a particular time in your life. Soon the room was being overlaid and eventually consumed by this continuous fabric curling over me like a wave, not like waves you'd see on an ocean beach. There were these blocks that lined the entire back, curling part of this wave. Each block seemed to be slightly raised from the fabric's surface, like a keyboard button or a tile. Strange, simple, archetypal faces adorned each block like you'd see on maybe Minecraft or Super Mario, all blank-faced, like frozen emotions of awe or complacency, all looking forward. This wave, I felt like it threatened to overtake me. Around these blocks, the wave was constructed by these lens-shaped cells, all in a very pastel-colored composition. It reminded me of the colors of a stand of tall trunk trees in the distance from the perspective of a grassy hill, even had blue sky in front of the wave. The blocks at the back of the curl were the ochre brown in color, and the lens-shaped cells all flowed from the treetops, down through the blocks which were like the trunks of the trees, filtered down around the archetypal block faces. It reminded me of how cars would move around buildings in a city from an aerial perspective. I was in total awe, and this was scaring the shit out of me. There was the disconcerting rate that these cells began to flow towards me, and how the whole place had a very tangible plasticine or claymation look to it. It was very real, stable, solid, and dimensional. Secondly, and the most unsettling part, was this invisible, omnipresent entity that seemed to claim ownership of this place. I was apologetic, respectful in my trespassing, but it did not care. Before I could complete a single thought, pleading for mercy or compassion, it would shut me down. Hard. All with a non-verbal no. Again and again. I remember telepathically hearing, "You fucked up this time. You're never going back. You're dead. And now, you're here forever." So these eye-shaped cells began to cluster and stick to my body in this standing on end sort of fashion, not unlike how iron filings arrange themselves on the poles of a strong magnet. This was giving me a visual on what was causing the tingling pins and needles feeling I always get on the front side of my body when taking salvia. Why the back side of my body never gets this feeling is still unknown. It was like any side of my body exposed to this wave-like feature was receiving some sort of radiation from it, almost as if you were sitting in the sun. The exposed parts of my body had these pins and needles as the salvia gravity pushed me back. As these lens-like cells began to cluster around me, I got the sensation of almost drowning in them, which triggered a brief fight or flight reaction which made me sit up. I almost got up and ran. Some sender of myself knew this was pointless, and I forced myself to relax and go back into it. The omnipresent entity was pissed. I felt as though I walked into a meeting where evil was being conspired, and I was being threatened with my life for entering this room. I felt as though I was seeing something I was not supposed to, and for not my own good. It had something to do with souls, a purgatorial state this entity held captive there beyond their will. The images slowly blended back into my real-world surroundings, and I was left with some extremely profound downloads from this place. I got the feeling that that realm is a click away on the radio dial from our reality. I was threatened and warned not to enter that place by some omnipresent but invisible entity. It told me,
"We pull the strings around your reality. Be careful where you put your nose. We can take you out in a second."
Here's where it gets really fucking weird. As I was still high, in total disbelief, fascinated, rattled, shaking, definitely humbled, but slowly coming down, I decided to take a shower to relax, to get my head straight and try to wash this all away. Within seconds of being in the shower, I felt this crunch under my foot, and extreme pain shot up my leg. I yelled in a shaky, scared shitless way I have never yelled before. Both of our cats darted into the bathroom and could tell I was in total distress by the way in which it must have sounded, assuming I just stepped on a black widow spider, in a state of existential fear I have never felt before in my life. I'm absolutely certain that Salvia manipulated something into my reality to set me up, to fucking kill me. I slowly lift my foot to reveal a honeybee. How the hell? I stepped on a bee and got stung. The relief was short-lived, for this ran through my head. Here's a little reminder, this voice in my head. We run shit around here. Careful where you put your nose, because we can make things happen. I can make you disappear. I can't even tell you how this affected me in the years to come. I can no longer smoke pot because it brings back that recollection of existential dread. Classic psychedelics I can still tolerate with no ill effect, but pot is definitely out of the equation. This was over 5 years ago, and it still rattles me. The questions. Maybe this was not a coincidence. Was that bee placed there for me as a reminder? To send a message? Did Salvia have control of this reality and make this happen? Just to send me a reminder to take the threat seriously? It's a hell of a coincidence if it's not. This is my most earth-shattering trip for me. DMT can't even compare. How it completely fucked with my head, and it's all I could think about for weeks, was definitely novel. Something classic psychedelics don't hold a candle to. Incredible power. It will push the boundaries of what you believe. It will shatter and rearrange sense of reality and what's real. I can say with good confidence that the universe far bigger, stranger, and more complex than we could ever imagine. I am a 20-year veteran psychonaut, experienced in DMT, MXE, ketamine, high dose of LSD, psilocybin, and mescaline, and handle most of those with total ease. Salvia is different. It is connected to some very powerful shit. Are the threats just a facade? A ruse to test your courage and willingness to persevere and achieve a higher state of consciousness? Are there things going on behind the curtain that we aren't too privy to, and something prefers to keep it that way? Are we captivated in a reality created by something else for the purpose of utility? After Salvia, the plot of the Matrix seems far more real than I previously thought. So in closing, careful where you put your nose. This trip occurred 2 months ago. I'm still rattled. I am 16, not really experienced with psychedelics, though I have tripped about 8 times before on acid and shrooms. My previous trips did not prepare me even a little. This was so much more. Unlike every other time I've tripped, I went into this with a purpose, to find happiness. I think me going into this with a purpose is what kept me from psychosis. So basically, I bought some weed from a friend about 2 weeks before this trip occurred, and no lies, the strongest weed I have ever smoked. I had been saving it until the day when I picked up some salvia, which I had never done before. I'm not sure how much I got, but it wasn't a lot, so I'm assuming it was concentrated, because I paid $30 for this small amount, and well, it was fucking insane. I smoked 2 bowls of weed from my bong and then 1 bowl of the salvia. The salvia was super harsh in my throat and made me cough my lungs up. Prior to smoking, I started the shower and planned on getting in there right after smoking and take just a quick shower, then lay in my bed. That didn't end up happening. After smoking, I was extremely high from the weed, but I did find my way to the shower. And soon after getting in, my entire body got so warm and waves of euphoria went through my body. Then those little random thoughts started going through my mind, and I said out loud, "What am I doing?" I pondered this for a little bit, then thought, "I'm dying." I then tried to tell myself, "You can't die from weed," and then, "Why should I even live?" Thoughts like this kept coming to mind. At this point, my mind is racing. Then all of a sudden, it all stops for about 10 seconds. I realize I'm taking a shower and decide to sit down and rest my back against the wall with the water still raining down on top of me. This is where it gets crazy. After sitting for about 5 seconds, I close my eyes, and instantly, I lose my connection to my physical body. I got the feeling I wasn't alone, and I wasn't. I didn't meet any entities or anything, there were just two of me. The other me took me far away from my house, basically teleported me to this massive room with a huge TV like at the movie theater. He turned it on. On the TV was me. Not the me who was there, but me from a first-person perspective living life, but in my past. I saw myself back in middle school as a 6-year-old and getting born. Then all of a sudden, I became the me who was in the TV. I became unaware that I was in the TV until the me who was controlling the TV decided to take me out. The me who was controlling the TV then told me that I didn't need him nor the TV to do this. He told me that my brain was a computer and that the world I knew was a simulation fabricated by otherworldly entities. He also told me every single second of my life was recorded in my computer memory. He then took me back to some bad memories. He made me relive several traumatic moments in my life. I relived them like they were truly happening. It was terrible. I was so scared. I then came back to reality. I was rattled by this terrified, "I'm not real" thought. I then went back, not to the room with my TV, but instead, I used my newfound power to unlock my brain 100%. I remember thinking that exact thing when I went back in. I decided to test this out and went back to the second I was born. I became myself as a baby, but this time I became the baby me, again, unaware that I was the baby. A small part of me knew, but I had no way out. I was going to relive my entire life over and over again, forever. I was teleported back to the TV and greeted by the other me. I think at this point my eyes were open, but I wasn't processing anything I saw. I think they were open because in the trip, the other me was basically torturing me with time. I was living in a different dimension where time was so slow that 1 second lasted as long as my entire life did. Every second was another lifetime. I was trapped. Once I was just completely convinced this was my life now, he pulled me out. He didn't actually say anything, but I again came back to reality. Once I was back, I had a realization. That was all a trip. I'm fine. And then I realized the deeper meaning behind it. The meaning was planted into my brain by the other me. Time can either be a curse or a blessing. When you really think about that, it's true. Someone in prison wants nothing more but for time to accelerate, and someone given 2 weeks to live after being diagnosed with cancer wants nothing more but for time to slow down. Time is what ultimately has authority over us all. After that, I closed my eyes again. I thought about why I wouldn't just try to be happy and make the best of my limited time, and then my mind started racing again. Thoughts and reasons as to why I should want to live flooded my mind. I then came back to reality, turned off the shower, stood up, grabbed a towel, and stumbled to my room. I was still super out of it. I couldn't remember whether I had been in my bed the whole time or not. My memory was so bad that I couldn't remember anything that I did more than a second ago. I soon fell asleep. I woke up feeling happier than I have since I was a little kid, even after learning that the world is a simulation and that I'm a fucking robot. I have continued to live with a better mindset. Psychedelics are not a party drug. Since this incident, I've been happier and more friendly, as well as more confident. This drug has helped me from just using it one time than years of therapy. No two humans are the same. That's why nobody can help your mental state as much as you can. I've been meditating a lot recently. I highly recommend this as it helps with stress tremendously. I have returned to psychedelics since this incident, and I have helped the other mental health issues I have. I hope you all enjoyed this. Peace.